Life is hectic, demanding, and doesn't stop. When honest with ourselves, we must confess we often don't know what the hell we're doing. The LARKCAST is an ongoing conversation about the inclusive and mischievous nature of God's presence through the lens of all the things that make up this phenomenon we refer to as life. Astonishing grace and refreshing honesty collide right here for your weekly encouragement.
Welcome back to the LARKCAST. Cheers, Russ. How you doing? Good to see you.
Cheers.
You got water in that whiskey glass?
Yeah, dude, I've become a fan of an inch of water in the bottom of a glass.
It's like you're practicing for 3:30, or 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's like pretty soon this is gonna be brown water in here.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I'm just practicing, man. Practicing with a little tequila.
Oh, nice.
Isn't that how comedy works though, right? Like you always take it like the opposite direction of where you think it's going. I've kind of noticed that, man, like listening to comics for the last 43 years of my life.
You listened to comics when you were 1 year old?
I did. I was.
Oh, dude, that's impressive.
It is, man. It's some people did nursery rhymes. Me, I just
Wow, dude, you're advanced.
Some kids are walking around singing Mary, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and some of us are walking around reciting Richard Pryor. So,
you were studying comedy theory.
I was
at the ripe age of 6 months.
Yeah. People who knew me when I was a kid, they're always like, hey, dude, out of curiosity, like, how did you get the name Howie? Because I mean, I've got yearbooks, bro, like in middle school and early high school where my name literally in the yearbook is Howie Johnson. And
did you have like a little afro or what did you have going on?
No, I wish. Well, my older brother, man, he's a comedian and he definitely could have made a killing at it if he was stuck with it. But he just watching, comedy acts with him, man, from like a small age. I had Eddie Murphy Raw like memorized as a little kid, which isn't good, by the way. It was funny though. I will say that.
So, fine print, not good.
Fine print.
Probably landed you in the principal's office a couple of times.
Oh, for sure. But I could do like the whole stand-up Howie Mandel back in the day. Howie Mandel was a comedian, before he was ever like a news show or a TV show host.
Yeah, America's Got Talent.
Yeah, dude. Like long before all that, man, he was a stand-up comic, and I could do like his whole deal, dude, when I was like third grade. And so he started calling me Howie, and it was just like this nickname. So, anyways,
so you're always a comedian. You're always cracking funnies.
Not that I'm good at it, but yeah, I do my best. I need an audience. Nice. That's what I found. You gotta have that audience.
You're good at an audience.
Give me an audience. It's like
I have witnessed that.
That's where it turns on. And if not, then I guess I'm pretty boring.
For all of you who listen to the podcast, you experience Russ Johnson, who is hell bent on getting his point across. But if you get him in an audience,
yeah,
he can work it.
Yeah. That's I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is a true thing.
It's a good thing.
If I got something to say, like I gotta get it out, bro. I remember getting in so much trouble as a kid. Like if you say one more word, and I'm like, well, here we go.
Here we go. So the big issue I got going on at my house right now is all this Halloween candy, bro. And I know you just have like little Eli, and I'm sure he probably hasn't graduated to a pillowcase candy bag just yet, right? He's probably got like a little bit of a smaller kind of a like pumpkin
smaller bag.
Yeah, he's got a smaller bag.
Yeah.
All my kids, they're just like right into like pillowcase get as much candy as you can. And, you know, they're like, you're holding this thing and you're like, I think might be 12 pounds of candy right here. And man, in the past,
did you get your candy tax? That's what
all
the dads do.
It's really
right? All
not
the
a
dads get
candy
that candy
tax. I just eat from it all like everybody else, and that's the problem. So I find myself just, you know, sitting down with the kids and we're just like, you know, watching the Bulls game or whatever. Next thing you know, there's like 60 wrappers of Sour Patch Kids and Skittles and everything just laying on the floor. And like, dude, before all this happened, I was just like, all right, man, like I'm gonna try my best. I'm gonna do good. Like I'm just gonna really like not try to eat a bunch of candy. Dude, I didn't last like an hour, bro.
Mm.
The good I want to do, dude, I don't do it. And the bad I want to avoid, I do it.
Dude. I was gonna say,
never has Romans 7 been so real to me than this week. I guess I'll just say that.
Yeah, like all of a sudden, these things that are written in the scriptures of old become extremely relevant to our modern day. As I sit here on my floor, ashamed and crying in a pile of candy wrappers.
Yeah.
Knowing that what I know to do, I don't do. Yeah.
Which I think is a good segue into this conversation, because I think a lot of the questions we get in light of grace are people who are really, really, really concerned and really working hard to try to make that whole bit that Paul has in Romans 7, that whole dilemma, like to try to make it go away, or they're trying to limit it, or try to like, you know, eradicate it or manage it.
Yeah.
Right. And so they want that transformation. They want something other than the frustration of that.
Yeah, man. I was just yesterday, dude, I was in a conversation with a leader within the church world who's concerned about another leader of a church plant. In regards to like his lax nature on the push for transformation and change, and you know, the very thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of us, man, like what I've learned over the years with myself and with the people around me is we constantly drag business ideas and business principles into the church as if like the church is a business. And just to be clear, like business is a good thing and making money is a good thing because you can like actually pay your bills and provide for your family and eat and live indoors. And I mean,
pick up
I don't
a
know
few
about you,
tabs while you're travel.
right? Like these are good things. And so, you know, business at its core is really simple. Find a need and fulfill it really well. That's business. And if your ability to scale that is how you grow it. It's not complicated. And just so again, just to be clear, like that's a good thing. But I find that we constantly drag that into the world of church. Like the church is this business that needs to grow and sustain itself financially. And so nickels and noses become the measure of everything. Well, if you want to obtain and maintain more nickels and noses, then you need something that's pretty neat and tidy, not messy. You need something that doesn't create tension or escalate tension. It diffuses tension. And of course, like with Jesus, we find the total opposite. He brings tension. He escalates tension in situations. His crowd shrinks as he goes. He doesn't get larger. But I'm just kind of learning, like there's like the business thing within the world of church, but then there's also like this, when it comes to like personal, like holiness and change and transformation that all of us are obsessed with. That's where we sort of drag in like the whole conditional promise nature of humanity, right? Like what we learn in the sports world. If I practice hard, then I get the position, right, on the team. If I work hard, I get a promotion. If I try really hard with this girl, well, then she'll like me, or you know, or if it's with this guy, or you know. And so we're constantly like it's like we drag business into the church, and then we drag the nature of conditional promises into our relationship with Jesus and how God sees us and what he's going to do in and through our lives.
Yeah.
And in the midst of that, right, you have a God who's saying, yeah, those things work for business. Working hard might land you a job on the team, or showing up to work on time might mean you keep your job. Hey, by the way, that's all good. But just so we're clear, that has nothing to do with how I see you. That has nothing to do with the purpose for which you exist. And it has nothing to do in regards to your standing before me. But I just feel like as much as we see that throughout the scripture, there is this thing in us, dude, that just will not just let go, man. We just won't free fall into that grace the way Jesus did.
No, it won't stop. It's, it's called the old Adam and Eve. And like Paul said, just before he gets into that internal dilemma passage in Romans 7, like it needs to be crucified. It needs to die. And the only thing that can kill it, the only thing that can kill the old Adam, which is obsessed with doing, it's obsessed with control, is to give it the announcement that it is finished. Because Jesus leaves nothing for the old Adam and Eve to do. Nothing. It completely removes all of its doing.
Yeah.
And it's sit there. And so, like, in light of the announcement of salvation by grace alone, it scrambles, it freaks out. It starts to just like shake and jitter but what about this? What about this? What about that? That's what it does. It freaks out, and it's meant to scare you to death. It's meant to scare the old Adam to death. That's the point. It's the whole point, is to bring you to your death, to realize there's nothing left for you to do in light of the announcement. It is finished. And I know we got into it a ton last episode, crisis of capacity. We constantly want to drag Jesus' words into the realm of possibility, or at least act as if we're these independent agents that can grab hold of these commands and kind of like make them happen on our own. But the number one thing that God is trying to do is he's trying to scare you unto your death. He's trying to mortify your old Adam. He wants to kill it. Because here's the deal, dude. I love how we talk about the scene in the garden. And it's so true. Like, and I've heard Jameson was talking a ton about this over the last leg of the Lark tour. We've talked about it a ton on this podcast. It's like, if eating of the fruit was the thing, like just that disobedient act, well then, okay, then maybe we might think of ourselves as like God's work moving forward is to like help us make better choices, which is like the theme of my kids' grade school, by the way, is make better choices. You even hear like some moms as they're leaving for school, like every day, they're like, make better choices. And I have this like laugh to myself every time I hear that.
Dude, I'm just gonna be straight honest for just a moment. I just gotta go there. Mini Russ 1983 is literally turning around and going, Mom, I can't. I've been trying every day to make better decisions. Damn it, I just can't do it. But nowhere in society will give you the freedom and the space, man, to just be real and honest about that. Make better choices sounds great until you come to the realization that you're not able to, man.
Yeah. And I think it's in finally coming to grips with that is the only thing that can free us to be honest. Because Adam and Eve, I don't want to lose my spot, but Adam and Eve in the garden, they fell out of trust in God.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I love what God does in the person and finished work of Jesus. Faith is what Adam and Eve lost. Grace, by removing doing, gets us back to trusting, because it's the only thing left to do.
Yeah. I'm gonna just go ahead and say, like, when you see what you're declaring right now about the garden and how everything stems from that all the way into the present of the coming of the Messiah and what he came to do and what he accomplished, and right life in light of that reality, it is neat, man, to pull back and go, dude, Jesus showed us what it looks like to free fall into the Father's acceptance for 33 years. For 33 years, he literally like free fell, man, like in freedom by faith, trusting the Father's acceptance all the way to the point of his death. Because the issue in the garden is not disobedience, therefore better decisions is a solution. No, the issue in the garden is distrust. And the solution is literally like it created a disease in us. So the only solution is a life of trust, a life of dependence.
Yeah.
Jesus fulfilled the law by trusting the law that we can't. He fulfilled that by trusting God, not toiling for God.
Right.
So if follow Jesus is your thing and imitate Jesus is like what we need to be doing, and that's all about like, we turn that into somehow like coercing our flesh into this thing that looks and says and does all the right things. We miss the fact that no, following Jesus, to imitate Jesus, is therefore a life of trusting the acceptance of the Father.
Yeah. Yeah. So we just got done with, we're past Halloween, Reformation Day, which a lot of people, call it or refer to that. And there was a quote from Luther that was thrown around and on social media. And I think it's exactly what you're saying. He said, the law says do this and it is never done. Grace says believe in this and everything is done. The law is fulfilled in Christ. He did it all, everything. Yeah. And by faith, we find ourselves united and immersed in him, meaning now his life counts for ours. His righteousness now counts for ours. His rule keeping now counts for ours. His death is now ours. His resurrection is now ours. His ongoing life.
Yeah.
And how he works out his life in and through us, Galatians 2, is now ours. And literally the call is to just die and trust. And sometimes, dude, I'm going to tell you, it seems impossible. And this is why the old Adam starts going into convulsion, like, you know what I'm saying? Like freak out mode, because it will do anything but give up doing or thinking that it brings something to the table.
Yeah. Which I think is like off that point, man, like what you're saying in regards to the old nature, this sin of self-reliance running in our veins. We got to bring something to the table. We can do this. We need to do this. Like we can't let go of that myth because of this just obsession that we have with control, which I think is why we have an obsession with transformation, right? And therefore we have all the expectations of transformation. And as we talked about in the last podcast, and out of that comes a perversion of what transformation actually is. I think you're right, man. It does come down to our unwillingness to trust, our unwillingness to let go.
Well, I think too, like just being a sinner is frustrating.
Yeah.
Having limitations is frustrating. Hurting the people around me that I really, really care for, and finding myself in conversations where I'm forced to deal with the weight and the reality of my selfish actions and how that affected my kids, my wife, the people I work with. It's frustrating. Like, dude, if I could, you know what I'm saying? If there was something I could do to like remove that awkwardness, the consequences of my own folly, the alienation that comes from me being, just broken in real time, dude, that would be great.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden we're back in Romans 7. Who will set me free from the body of this death?
Right. This thing in me that's constantly eating mounds of candy when I know, put down the damn candy. How many Reese's Cups can a man eat in one evening?
And when confronted with the amount of candy I've eaten, I will justify and I will minimize and I will try to take that thing and make it out to be something not as bad as what it really is, even though the evidence is laying all over the floor.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's the It's that idea, dude, that in our ear, man, is that constant whisper of you are not enough. And in the other ear is this constant whisper of, but the grass is greener over there on the other side of the hill. Right. And so life is just like this constant battle of these two endless lies. Why can't I look at the pile of candy wrappers around me and be like, yeah, this was fun and all this candy was great. And no matter how much of it I've eaten here, Jesus still loves me and I'm still the righteousness of God. Because the mystery of the gospel, the mystery of the cross, the mystery of Jesus's death and resurrection for my own is, as 2 Corinthians 5 says, we have literally been made the righteousness of God because we've been brought into him who is the righteousness of God. His name's Jesus. Right. So no matter how much candy I've eaten, I'm still loved. However, if I keep eating candy like this, probably not going to go well.
Yeah.
Right. There's a myriad of effects that come from this. And I don't think we within Lark are minimizing the effects or by any means saying like, yeah, go do dumb things that hurt you and hurt others. Nor do we see Jesus saying this. I think what Jesus is constantly showing us is, one, he's always creating this crisis of capacity in his teachings, which we talked about on the last episode, that's bringing us to the end of our virtuous rope, helping us see what the law actually demands and your complete inability to meet this. And then through his death, he shows us that, hey, you getting it together is not the life that I've given you. You walking in what's good and not eating candy forever is going to be good for you, by the way. But I didn't create you to not eat candy all the time. I didn't give my life so that you could somehow not have to eat candy all the time. Right? Like, no, like the beauty of life, like life, the essence of it itself is this journey of trust with the one that's made you. That's what I've brought you into. And again, that's where this fear of I'm not enough, I got to make it happen. You know what I mean? Like if you're in some church settings, it's all about like the personal holiness, right? The better self. In some church settings, it's like, no, man, like, that's not a big deal. It's all about a better society and loving God and loving your neighbor, right? It's you just kind of in this, like you live in this endless freaking to-do list, bro. It's just constantly being thrown at you and telling you that you only are enough by how well you perform in this.
Yeah.
This is what it means to follow Jesus. And we're going, damn it. No, it's not. It's not.
And it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to make sense of that. Like it's hard to try to convince someone, because like in the last episode, we talked about like Christianity's gotten this knack for like morality and action, or we think of like religion is like just equates to good. And then, we're over here saying like, no, we need to be saved from our good works and our bad works. The tricky nature of doing good. And he just knows something about the human heart, because if we just say like, hey man, this is just about like, hey, don't be the younger brother in the parable of the prodigal son, be like the older brother. If you let good works go unchecked, well then somewhere along the way, we're going to think somehow that these good works point to our goodness. And we're going to start to take credit for them. And we're going to start to think like, man, I'm pretty awesome. And eventually we're going to start to convince ourselves that not only do I not need God, I must be God myself because I'm crushing this.
Yeah.
So you could see, again, Adam and Eve lost faith in the garden. Life is found in life himself, not your own ability to get it together. By removing the doing in it is finished and salvation by grace alone, it brings us back to trust. But everybody wants to walk in that newness of life that Paul's talking about in Romans 6. We all want it. We all want it. We all want to walk in the reality of his resurrection. But as I've said before, we all want resurrection before death.
Right.
We want resurrection, the reality of resurrection without death. We want to do good works. We want to do good works for neighbor. We want to remove the insanity of Romans 7, the frustration of our brokenness, right? These good works without calculation or claim, like without planning it or pronouncing it or posting about it, right? And that can only happen when the old man is put to death. It can only happen when the obsession with doing good dies. Newness of life, like the kind that Paul talks about in Romans 6, happens after the old man is crucified. It comes after the death of the old man. And so you hear a lot of people talk about all-consuming, anxious efforts to bear fruit, be transformed, change, grow in sanctification and holiness, as if it were something to attain to and grab hold of through scheme and through effort, something to be attained, almost like an X marks the spot, almost as if there's a finish line. You know what I'm saying? Like something we're moving toward. Newness of life is a starting line. It's a beginning point, not a finish line. In fact, it's only after we realize that Jesus reached the finish line on our behalf, it is finished, can this newness begin. Newness is about beginning after we experience death, not finishing, not congratulations. So be careful that this alleged change, holiness, sanctification, transformation, if it's something you're pursuing and working hard at, but something that just happens and appears in the wake of our deaths. And it's a mysterious thing of why God does some things and doesn't do others. Like, why would he give Paul the realization in Philippians 2 that his resume was a big pile of shit, but then not remove his thorn later on? Why do I experience the goodness of God and transformation and fruit in some areas, but then I'm left with the constant frustration of battling it and having no victory in other areas?
I think what the Lord is teaching us is a life of trust. And I think he's doing that in and through how he chooses. And we can't see and understand it all. And that's okay. Because just if I'm being clear, man, I think that's where people get stuck in the conversation of grace and all the parables that Jesus taught, and why the question has come, what do I do with all these other things that Jesus said? Okay. In our last episode, we unpacked a few things from like the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus creates this crisis of capacity around what it really means to not be angry, right? Or to not murder or to not commit adultery. But he goes further, man. Like, we've had people say, well, what about like love God and love others? Is that not the whole heart of Christianity? Is that not what Christianity is about? Is loving God and loving others? Should we not be taking our freedom and all these things and liberty that we've been given to love God and love neighbor? I mean, I was just seeing people like just should all over other people just yesterday about that. And I'm like,
I hate
dude,
when people should all over the place.
Oh man. And I get it. I've been there. Oh my gosh, have I been there so many times over the years?
Yeah, totally.
But I'm looking at them and I'm going, guys, have you read 1 Corinthians 13 about love? Yeah. Based off how God, the maker of love, defines what love is, do you honestly think you love God? Oh, well, I do. Okay. You just got done telling me a few minutes ago about some things that you're bothered about in your life, frustrated about, angry about, going to the Lord about. Why is this not taken away from me? Why am I still dealing with this? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, did you? 1 Corinthians 13 says love keeps no record of wrongs. What? Yeah. And yet here you are with a complete list of all your record, going to the Lord in frustration and anger about it, yet saying, oh, by the way, God, I love you. BS, dude. BS. You don't love. You don't.
Yeah. Yep.
Love forgives all things. Look at all these people that you're so angry about, what they should be doing and how you're harping on them. What if you just forgave them? Well, if I do that, then, right? Boom, there it comes again. Right? Now we just jump to another law. And I'm like, you're missing it. You don't love God and you don't love people. Mm-hmm. So 1 Corinthians 13, in the definition of what love really is just one more instance in which God is literally provokes a crisis of capacity in humanity, and showing them that what morality demands, you cannot keep. And thus it is insufficient of what you actually need, which is a savior, not a guide, a life of trusting, not a life of toiling. They're two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's a big aha, man. And again, they were like, I don't know, dude. Matthew 28, Jesus said, to make disciples and teach them to observe all that he commanded. He did. As you're going is what that means. Disciple others means tell others, teach others. And what did he say? To observe all that, right? That I commanded. Well, what do you mean observe? To see it, to know it. Yeah, man. Talk to them about what it really means to be holy, just like Jesus did with us in the Sermon on the Mount. And let that beautiful wound take place.
Yeah. Go have all the same conversations, I've been having.
But we take it and turn it into teach them how to fix their flesh, bro, and make it happen, how to get it together in the name of God. What it really means to be a devoted follower of Jesus.
Again,
and I'm like, you mean a life of trust? No, man. Oh, a life of trying? Yeah. And I'm like, well, bro, that's total opposite of what Jesus actually reveals.
Yeah. Somehow we've convinced ourselves that a life of faith is how well we perform at the Christian life.
Correct.
Like it's how well we do. And so we'll ask ourselves this question. Hey man, how's your faith? And what we mean by that is how well are you doing at all the Christian stuff? How well are you doing at reading your Bible? How well are you doing at loving your wife? How well are you doing at loving your kids? How well are you doing at your job? How well are you doing at saying no to all this, stuff? Give me your spiritual report card.
Yeah.
That's what it means. Evaluate your life, take account of everything that's going on, right? And then give me a report card on how you're doing. And then we call it, how's your faith? Dude, faith looks outside of yourself. It's the very obsession with looking inward. It's the very obsession with looking inward that he's trying to rescue us from.
Yeah.
Just you know what I'm saying? He's trying to take our eyes, dude. Stop looking at you and others and look to me. That's where transformation comes from. So really, really quick, 2 Corinthians 3:18. I was reminded of this in prepping for our conversation. It says, and we all with unveiled face, unveiled as if like it's kind of like, dang, dude, I used to think of Jesus as like he was just nothing, or he was a good teacher, or and I came to realize like who he really was. Like, holy crap, like my eyes are open to like God in the flesh, come down, live, die, rise, right? Like rescue me. And we all with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, the weight of the Lord, the awesomeness of the Lord, man. Like he's just dope, right? When we see him for what he's done. We all beholding the glory of the Lord are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. Where's this come from? Accountability groups, looking inward, spiritual report cards, constant radical introspection. No, Paul says this comes from the Lord who is the Spirit. It comes from God himself as we look at him, not constantly obsess over our freaking report cards. Faith looks outside, bro. Somehow we've just jacked up the lexicon and the words.
Yes, that's kind of I couldn't help but laugh while you were sharing, because I'm like, man, the irony in that, right? Like, hey, man, based off what you can see that you're doing and not doing, how's your faith? Meanwhile, in Hebrews, faith is the assurance of what you cannot see. So I'm just like the irony of that. Somehow, how's your faith is determined by what you can see in regards to what you're doing and not doing. Where the scriptures literally define faith, that's the opposite of that. It's not a life of sight that we've been given. It's a life of faith.
Yeah.
A life of learning to trust the one who has loved us and been for us long before we ever got here.
Yep. That
is the life in front of us. And what Jesus has done is come and given us life to pay any debt that was needed, right? To reconcile all the things that we've done wrongly and committed against others, and all the things that have been wrong and done and committed against us. Scriptures tell us in Colossians 1 that through his blood, he literally reconciled everything on earth and on heaven, so that we could be brought back into this fellowship that we were made for. And so in his righteous life, we exist, it says. That's why we are the righteousness of God, it says, right? The life in front of us is a life of trusting, not trying. And so the transformation, the thinking about things differently than we do, the desiring things that we don't desire right now, the love for things that are good, the pursuit of things that are good. Okay. All that. Amen. That's all for your joy and for the joy of those around you. It's a good thing, right? Like you actually, this is what it means to be human. You actually feel what it means to be alive in these things. All right. This is good. But that's a work that the Lord does in and through us. And how well we walk in that right now, or where we are in that journey, or what's happening or not happening, has no basis upon the fact that you are the righteousness, literally the holiness of God, because you exist in him who is holy, who is righteous. And I just think that we've got to see that, man, like transformation, the change of thoughts and desires and beliefs and practices in life are good and beautiful, but it's something that happens to us by him as he chooses. And don't, please, for any moment, make that the point of the Christian life. That's the fruit of the Christian life, not the root.
Yeah.
Okay. And those things are night and day. And I'm just going to say this just to make this clear, because I've had people say, I don't know, man. The other day, sorry, dude. Damn. The other day, somebody was saying to me, just their love for the political system right now, and just this need to produce all these various like programs that need to happen, and the increase of taxes and more laws to prevent harsh words, or, we need laws that produce, that literally force, everything, not just, we don't just need to be equal, like there needs to be equity. You know what I mean? That's another thing that's been, and it was all being discussed at the bar. And I'm listening to it, and they're going, this is good. This is right. They literally look at me, Russ, this is what it would mean to love God and love others. This is what people should be doing. And this is a way to make that happen. How could you possibly be opposed to it? This is how we get a transformed people and a transformed society. And I'm listening to it going, dude, you know how funny it is how quickly you can mirror that to how the church thinks, right? Programs that produce, right, what we think are supposed to happen is no different than government doing the same thing. And I always kind of find it humorous how people who are all for church programs that force about transformation are anti-big government forcing transformation. And people who are anti the church having programs that force transformation are all okay with the government having programs that force transformation. And meanwhile, I'm looking at it and going, hey, I don't know if you know this, but in Romans, I believe it's in chapter 14, you find the most radical indictment of our human virtue of anywhere in the scriptures. Paul says, for that which does not proceed from faith, referring to in Jesus, okay, for anything that does not come out of faith in Jesus, he says, is sin. It is, again, the most radical indictment of our human virtue and all of our yearnings and pushing and processing and programming and planning and managing and mapping transformation. And he literally refers to it as sin, bro.
Right. And like the reason why that jacks with us, is because we think good is just good across the board. And we don't see, right, the ugly details underneath it all, because we've so equated God with this idea of like, oh, God's on the side of good and the devil's on the side of evil. So anything that has an appearance of good must be in the God bucket. And you're just like, dude, no, read the freaking Bible. You know what I'm saying? And I don't mean that in a judging way. What I mean is just like, if you see this story going back to the beginning, it's about a life of trust.
Yeah, it's like we'll do the CEO of my company, man. He's not a murderer and he's not an adulterer. And I'm like, according to Jesus, he's both. According to what's actually true about not murdering and not being an adulterer, in the scriptures by the God who made us, okay, and gets therefore to declare these things. He's actually both. Well, but he hasn't physically, see, again, so I'm just saying, like, that's another example of how we think all these things because we don't outwardly do them, or if we're forced to not do them, or we're forced to do them. Well, therefore, this must be good. Somebody struggles with a pornography addiction, so they have a block on like every computer in their house, and then they put like a block on the actual internet system in their house, and then they meet with a person every single day who's an accountability group. Just to be clear, all those things are good. We're not saying like this is a bad thing as much as I'm saying what we'll do is we'll hold that up and go, see, man, they're transformed. And it's like, no. And of course, you could take that into other areas.
It's actually their lust has been put on house arrest. It's got an ankle bracelet and it's not allowed to do anything.
Yeah. So again, like when you go to that Romans passage, what he's saying is that what we're oftentimes holding up and counting as good and transformed, okay, it's not just unhealthy. He literally says it's sin. It is sin. What you're counting, he's saying, is counterfeit change. And like counterfeit money, it's not worth anything, which means it has no value at all. AKA transformation is your Lord. You have a relationship with morality, not Jesus. And what you don't even realize is your relationship with morality is a false morality. So it's corrupt from the very get-go, from the foundation up. Dude, that's like, okay. I'm starting to see now like what transformation is and what it's not. And I think like probably the last question around this, which was a million, but probably the big bucket around it now is like, okay, so then how does transformation happen? Because if you're not careful, you could find yourself in this conversation going like, well, like, do I just not do anything? You know what I mean? I felt like helping my neighbor with his car the other day, but then I was sitting out there wondering like, well, is this from faith? Is it not? Is this real change? You know what I mean? Is it not? Can I do this? Am I just doing this because I'm religious and I don't trust Jesus? Mm-hmm. I'm just saying like there's a danger to that, to which case I just want to say to everybody like, dude, you're free to help your neighbor, man, period.
Well, it's until that whole like inward arguing dies, because the one who's actually been set free, it's not a conversation.
Bingo.
It's just, there is no, because we've just locked in on the fact that it's done.
Yeah.
And now I'm actually free to follow along with the God who I dwell in and he dwells in me, and the good works that go unplanned and unpronounced.
Yeah.
I'm free to just love.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself with this like internal wrestling and struggling, like, and it's like all consuming. That's what I was trying to say earlier. Like, dude, that is the old man just like not wanting to accept the terms. It is finished. And there's nothing left for him to do. And so that death, right? It's like, it's very, very similar to Nicodemus when he comes to Jesus at night. He goes, actually, Nicodemus, like what you need to be born again. Like this, all this questioning, all this wrestling, like you need to die. You need to experience death. You need a new starting line, right?
Yeah.
And then he even turns that into a work. Like, well, what the heck? Am I just going to like crawl back into my mother's womb? Like, how's this all work? And I think he's just trying to get our eyes off of ourselves. All that radical introspection, all that inner dialogue, all that anxiety, all that stuff. That passage I read in 2 Corinthians 3, we with unveiled eyes, we look to him. We just have our eyes dialed in on him.
Yep.
And when we do that, this transformation, it's a work he does in the mystery of just being caught up in how freaking awesome he is. So transformation, according to 2 Corinthians 3:18, is actually it's happening in the kitchen, dude, and you're not allowed in. It's not your work.
Yeah.
You're a guest at the table and you're trying to get up and walk into the kitchen and grab a freaking knife and be a sous chef in this whole deal, dude. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, just sit down and eat and receive. Know God as a giver of gifts, right? Trust him in his goodness. Keep your eyes on him. Keep your eyes on the good things that he gives and just receive. Dude, transformation is a mystery. Sanctification is a mystery. And dude, I love that there's so much evidence in the scriptures that we even take the good things that he gives, we can celebrate in them. And dude, actually, he's to be found in the negative things and the bad things and the struggles too.
Mm-hmm.
We're so wanting, like we imagine the way we imagine right now, like transformation. It's like, well, all right, Paul, let's talk about this thorn in the flesh. What's your plan to get rid of that? What are some steps you can take to get rid of this thorn?
Oh, dude,
can I help you? Can I help you with this? Actually, we have a new
curriculum on that one.
We have a new program set up for thorns and flesh removal. 6 weeks. You get paired with a community. You have a guide that helps you through that. A series of questions, right? And it's like, dude, man, like we don't realize that it's even in the struggling, even in the frustrating things, the things that we would count as non-transformation, he's actually using to bring about this really good work that he's doing in us. But dude, as soon as you start to enter the kitchen, bro, as soon as you start to get up from the table and see yourself as something other than a guest, dude, you're going to just jack it all up.
Yeah. Once you write the curriculum, man, and start the thorn-free class, it just gets jacked, dude. Start selling t-shirts.
Dude, I've been thorn-free for 3 months, dude.
Thorn-free. And you have, again, a God who's like, nope, you're already whole. You're already loved. You're already home. You're already free. You're already one with me. Okay. Because of the work of my son. And yes, there is something you're struggling with right now. And that's okay. My grace is sufficient. I'm present with you. Let's continue to walk together. The journey in front of you is a journey of faith, not sight. Okay. It's a journey of trusting, not trying. And in my good time and pleasure, I'll continue to work and move. But I think the thing that we could cling to in light of what you're saying, man, is that when you're no longer obsessed and involved in this inner dialogue or even the outward dialogue with all, the circles around you about how you're doing, okay, that's the evidence that you're actually doing better. Yep. When you're no longer obsessed and talking about transformation is the evidence, I feel like, that you're being transformed into really learning what it means to live by faith in Jesus. And just think about like that through the lens of like a gift. Just to throw this out, Jameson just on our team just put out a blog post, Give God Nothing, that just came out this week. Give God Nothing is the name of it. I was like, row. When diving into it, man, I was pretty stoked. I just got to read this really quick. He says, while the whole world judges one another based on our devotion to people and causes, Jesus judges us based on his devotion to us. While the world divides over who and what we're devoted to, Jesus is delighted in his devotion to us. We may have innocently concluded that we ought to love Jesus because of how he loved us, but we would do well to press further in. You see, a life lived and motivated by shoulds and oughts is no life of freedom. Exactly how is believing that you owe your life to God, since he gave Jesus, anything other than a rejection of the perfect gift he's given you? In my understanding, a debt that has been paid is no longer due. True gift is not presented with the expectation of reciprocation. The gift is free, or it is no gift at all. Mm-hmm. We've been given the gift of Jesus himself. He is our life. We already are whole. What we're learning to do is to live into that reality. So if you're a transformation, or if you're from the church world and you use that word sanctification, then just know that sanctification, transformation, change, is the art of getting used to your salvation. It is the art of getting used to the fact that you're already home. You're free to stop trying to get back here in the kitchen and just enjoy the party at the table.
Yep.
And I would just say this, man. John 15 is probably, which I know we wrote about in Reclaim. I think it's in what, chapter 5, where we talk about just how Jesus describes sort of like the relationship between God the Father, himself, and us throughout this life. He refers to the Father as like the gardener of this world.
Mm-hmm.
And he refers to the vine that's producing all of life within this world as the Son, Jesus. And then he refers to us as branches. Branches. Okay. Branches who have been brought to life, made, produced, right, from day one, in and through the vine. Cared for by the gardener. And never once did he tell us to be the gardener or that we could or should. Same with the vine. You know, and I think just not confusing that is really, 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 really important for all of us, man. Like in this journey that we're on. It's when you realize that fruit, change, you could say, okay, evidence of change, fruit, it's not our department. It's someone else's. It's something that comes by way of the vine. Branches don't produce fruit, right? Branches bear fruit, right? There's something else that's at work, by which case the fruit comes out of a branch. That's not of the branch, right? And I think we just have to keep going back to that understanding, to that reality that Jesus himself has declared about the world, about God, about the Son, about us, about change and how it happens. It's a work of someone else. He even goes so far as to saying, like, and if we're not bearing fruit, then the Father's this kind gardener who's going along and literally lifting up the vines that are on the ground, because that's how they grew it back then. Which you did a great job, by the way, of unpacking that in Reclaim. The Father comes along as gardener and he lifts these vines up off the ground so that they can get the right nourishment, the right, air and water and all that can begin to bring about what it is that he's doing. But 100% of this, dude, not 90, not even 99, 100% of this is done in and through him.
Yeah.
It's a work of the vine under the care of the gardener. So how does transformation happen? Well, from what I can tell, it's just something that the Lord does in and through us. He does it without us. He does it in spite of us, but he definitely does it, all of it, in and through our lives as we just learn to walk by faith, okay, in him.
Yeah.
Don't
And
think
I love
the
that
transformation is the point. It's not. It's just something he does along the way for our good.
And what's crazy is like the old Adam that just will not die. Let's take both of your scenarios there, because you just got done unpacking a lot about, you went, back to gifts. The old Adam will say, well, let's get real serious about making sure we appreciate this gift. Yeah. And let's let this gift giver know that it's not lost on us. And we're going to work really, really hard to make sure, right, that this thing is not wasted. So that's where, okay, that old Adam shows up. The old Adam shows up in John 15, where we say, oh, well, look at this word abide. It says this all happens as we abide. And then we start to attach a bunch of doing to abide, just like we attach doing and an obsession of looking inward to the word faith. And I like to just point out in John 15, because, dude, we'll do whole like series and small groups and books and preaching series on the word abide, and we're getting into spiritual formation and disciplines and all this other stuff. I think the church where I used to pastor at is right in the middle of a series called Habits of Grace. It's just like, dude, it's so hilarious. Like the
Do y'all
doing
not
of
have
grace.
anybody who knows anything about word placements and meanings involved in this?
Just so hilarious. But anyways, I don't want to get into that. But we'll do this whole thing around abide, about all the stuff that we need to do to abide, right? And put ourselves in the presence of God in order to make this fruit happen. And I really like to, I always like to point out in John 15, you see how it says, abide in me. He also says right after that, abide in me as I abide in you.
Row.
Like, is Jesus sitting around like trusting us? Is he waking up, like, having morning coffee around thoughts of us?
Yeah.
Is he running after work to go be a part of a small group where the conversation is about us? You know what I'm saying? So like, once you start attaching all this doing, all this, which can very subtly become earning and obsessing over and making this whole process of fruit bearing happen and getting it going yourself. Once you start attaching that to that word, you immediately get in trouble by saying, oh, he's doing that with us. It's like, oh crap.
Yeah. You undo it.
Oh shoot.
You literally undo what he's saying.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
abide just means union. It means I'm in him and he's in me. It speaks to the permanence of the union, the relationship, the reality that I'm safely, securely, and confidently hidden in him. I'm in him. He's in me.
Yeah. The way we describe it is like there's this vine in the garden and he's running around looking for independent branches that are laying around. And he's going up to him and he's saying, hey, why don't you abide in me as I abide in you? When you say that out loud, you go, well, that's just silly. That doesn't make any sense. Vines aren't walking around looking for branches. Branches, like, they exist in a vine. Yeah, I know. But the way we portray it is, it's either the vine's going around looking for us, trying to figure out how he can abide in us, or more importantly, or I should say more prominently, is us running around with this idea in our minds of like, we're all these independent branches in the garden and we're looking for the vine and going, hey, tell me how I can abide in you. And then we like kind of go and find some way of like working ourselves to abide in this vine. But branches don't do that because branches don't exist in and of themselves. If they do, they're dead. And dead things don't walk around looking for ways of doing something. So the idea that spiritual disciplines are how I abide in him, and then equating that, and also that's also how he abides in me. Like he's running around doing spiritual disciplines to abide in us. It's like, no, this is just totally silly. Stop.
But it just goes to show you, that is not
what abide means.
We just cannot deal or accept the announcement that it's finished.
Yeah. Give me anything but indiscriminate grace, right? Lord, give me a list, give me a map, give me a guide that'll help. Like, just give me something so that I can always be able to point to, like, I got a leg in this. I'm playing my part. Here's how I'm doing. Give me anything but the announcement. Hey, you're already one with me. And the gardener's in control. You're free to let go and enjoy the party.
I'm putting a period on it right there, dude.
Till next time.
Till next time.
Cheers.